I live near Branson, Missouri, close to an old theme park called Celebration City, which closed in 2008. It was a place I frequented as a child, filled with rides and shows. Recently, my friend Calvin and I decided to explore it. We parked across the street and waited until dusk before sneaking in. It felt eerie to see the once lively park so quiet. As we explored, we noticed signs of recent visitors like graffiti and broken glass. Eventually, we entered one of the buildings through a broken window. Inside, it was dark and creepy, with debris scattered around. While I checked out the bathroom, I heard a noise coming from one of the stalls. When I looked under the doors, I saw pairs of legs in each stall. Feeling unsettled, I quickly left and told Calvin what I saw. We left the park, feeling spooked and unsure about what we had encountered. It was a creepy ending to what was supposed to be a fun adventure. Despite feeling spooked, Calvin and I couldn't shake off the curiosity about what else we might discover in the abandoned park. The darkness enveloped us as we cautiously explored the desolate grounds. The silence was deafening, broken only by the occasional rustle of leaves in the wind. It was as if time had frozen within the decaying structures, preserving the memories of the park's former glory. We wandered through the remnants of forgotten attractions, our flashlights casting eerie shadows on the dilapidated buildings. Each creak of the floorboards echoed through the empty corridors, heightening our sense of unease. Despite our growing apprehension, we pressed on, driven by a mixture of curiosity and trepidation. As we ventured deeper into the heart of the park, we stumbled upon an old ticket booth, its windows shattered and its paint peeling. Nearby, a carousel stood motionless, its once vibrant colors faded by years of neglect. We exchanged nervous glances, silently acknowledging the surrealness of our surroundings. Our exploration took us to the park's main stage, where faded posters advertised long-forgotten performances. The sight sent shivers down my spine, reminding me of the park's lively past. Calvin and I exchanged whispered speculations about the fate of the performers and the audience who once filled the seats. Despite our attempts to rationalize our fears, an unshakable sense of foreboding lingered in the air. Every shadow seemed to conceal unseen threats, and every creak of the old structures sounded like a warning. We quickened our pace, eager to leave the desolate park behind us. As we made our way toward the park's exit, a sudden noise echoed through the darkness, freezing us in our tracks. We listened intently, our hearts pounding in our chests. Was it just the wind or something more sinister? Without exchanging a word, we broke into a run, desperate to escape the suffocating grip of the abandoned park. When we finally reached the safety of Calvin's car, we breathed a sigh of relief, grateful to leave the eerie atmosphere behind us. As we drove away, the abandoned park faded into the distance, a haunting reminder of the mysteries that lurked within its decaying walls. I'm a 30-year-old woman living alone in a mid to lower income area, where there's a hint of crime, but not enough to make it feel like a dangerous neighborhood. Despite this, there are times when I can't shake off the feeling of discomfort, especially when I find myself alone at night. I've made an effort to get to know my neighbors, but beyond my friendly next-door neighbors, the houses across the street remain a mystery. One night, my fear of living alone was amplified when I heard peculiar noises outside my house. It started with the faint crunch of leaves against the side of my house, leaving me questioning whether it was just an animal roaming around or something more sinister. The following evening, I was jolted awake by a tapping sound on my window frame. Though I called out, no one responded, and when I cautiously peered outside, the darkness offered no answers. Despite my attempts to dismiss the noises as figments of my imagination, they persisted, disrupting my attempts to sleep. The scratching and scraping sounds emanating from the backyard only fueled my anxiety, prompting me to investigate with trembling hands. Yet each time I turned on the lights, the eerie silence that followed offered no solace, leaving me on edge. As the night wore on, my unease reached its peak when there was a sudden knock at my front door. Bracing myself, I chose to ignore it, fearing the worst. Determined to bolster my security, I enlisted my brother's help to install doorbell and security cameras, hoping to deter any potential intruders. That same night, with my brother staying over for added comfort, we were both startled by a motion alert on my phone. Watching the footage, our hearts raced as we witnessed someone attempting to pick the lock on my back door. Reacting swiftly, my brother confronted the intruder, but they fled before we could identify them. Despite contacting the police, the lack of evidence left us feeling vulnerable and exposed. The incident left me questioning the safety of my neighborhood and whether the intruder could be someone familiar with my solitary existence. The uncertainty lingers, casting a shadow over my sense of security and reinforcing the challenges of living alone. When my parents divorced, my mom got 2 of the 5 houses my dad owned. It was a bittersweet arrangement, but we adapted. At 23, I had the freedom to choose where to stay, but I often gravitated towards my mom's place. This particular week, she was away at our beach house, leaving me alone in the main house. Living alone wasn't entirely new to me. I was accustomed to having the house to myself most of the time, especially when my mom traveled for work. The main house was spacious, with separate living areas for my mom and me. Upstairs, where my room was located, there was a kitchen, living room, and 2 bedrooms. The first floor mirrored this layout, and there was also a basement, which we rarely used. The house boasted 3 entrances: front, back, and side. The side entrance was convenient for me, especially when I needed to take out the trash. However, things took a strange turn when I started noticing some of my clothes were missing. It wasn't just a few items. Several of my favorite shirts seemed to have vanished into thin air. At first, I brushed it off, attributing it to my own forgetfulness, or assuming that maybe my mom had moved them for some reason. But as the days passed and more items went missing, I couldn't shake off the feeling of unease. I considered the possibility that a friend had borrowed them without asking, but it didn't fully explain the situation. One night, as I was watching a movie on my laptop in bed, my bedroom door suddenly creaked shut. It wasn't a forceful slam, but it definitely caught my attention. I glanced around the room, searching for an explanation. The ceiling fan was on, and both windows were open, so I reasoned that it must have been a draft. However, my sense of unease only intensified when I heard faint noises coming from the hallway outside my room. It sounded like someone moving around, but I couldn't be sure. With a mixture of curiosity and apprehension, I got out of bed and cautiously opened my bedroom door. The hallway was dimly lit, and the silence was eerie. I turned on the hallway light and ventured towards the living room, half expecting to find an intruder lurking in the shadows. To my relief, the living room appeared empty, but the feeling of unease lingered. Determined to put my mind at ease, I decided to check the downstairs area where my mom stayed. As I descended the staircase, I noticed that the basement door was slightly ajar. It was unusual since neither my mom nor I frequented the basement often. With a growing sense of trepidation, I pushed open the door and descended into the dimly lit basement. The air felt stale and a shiver ran down my spine as I surveyed the unfamiliar surroundings. The basement consisted of a few basic amenities, a couch, a TV, and some workout equipment, but nothing out of the ordinary. As I scanned the room, my eyes were drawn to a small crawlspace closet tucked away in one corner. The door was slightly ajar and I could sense movement from within. My heart began to race as I approached cautiously, unsure of what I would find inside. Just as I reached out to push open the closet door, a hand emerged from the darkness and pulled it shut with a soft click. Panic surged through me, and without a second thought, I turned and fled up the stairs, my heart pounding in my chest. Once safely upstairs, I wasted no time in calling 911, my hands trembling as I relayed the situation to the dispatcher. Within minutes, police officers arrived at the scene, their flashlights cutting through the darkness as they descended into the basement. I watched anxiously as they approached the closet, their voices hushed as they issued commands to the unseen intruder. With bated breath, I waited as the closet door slowly creaked open, revealing the shadowy figure within. To my horror, it was a middle-aged man, his face contorted in a mixture of fear and resignation. He was wearing one of my shirts, and as the officers led him away in handcuffs, I couldn't help but feel a sense of violation. Later, as I surveyed the contents of the crawlspace closet, I realized that many of my belongings were missing. The intruder had been living in the basement, unbeknownst to me, and had been helping himself to our possessions. The whole ordeal left me shaken and vulnerable, prompting me to take extra precautions to secure the house. I installed additional locks on the doors and invested in a security system to deter any future break-ins. Looking back on the experience, I couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. The thought that someone had been living in our house undetected sent chills down my spine. It was a sobering reminder of the importance of home security and the fragility of one's sense of safety. One winter break, I found myself home alone, enjoying a quiet evening in our sunroom, a cozy space where I often watch TV. The room had a door leading to the side driveway, offering easy access to the outdoors. As I settled in to watch a movie, the tranquility was suddenly shattered by the unexpected illumination of the motion-sensing light outside. Concerned by the abrupt change, I muted the TV and strained my ears for any unusual sounds. Despite my efforts, the night remained eerily silent. Curiosity getting the better of me, I cautiously lifted the blinds to peek outside, but saw nothing amiss. Unable to disable the light, I resigned myself to waiting it out. To ease my mind, I decided to investigate the source of the disturbance. Slipping on my shoes, I ventured outside to check the driveway, but found no signs of activity. Satisfied, I returned to the sunroom, hoping to resume my movie in peace. However, my tranquility was short-lived. Moments later, a loud crash echoed from outside, followed by the sudden illumination of the motion-sensing light once again. Fear crept into my heart as I considered the possibility of an intruder lurking in the darkness. Paralyzed by fear, I hesitated to move from the safety of the couch. With dread gnawing at my insides, I noticed something unsettling. A shadowy figure outlined against the closed blinds, its presence sending shivers down my spine. Struggling to catch my breath, I summoned the courage to rise from the couch. But before I could reach the safety of the door, aggressive knocking reverberated through the room. Terror gripped me as I realized the danger lurking just beyond the glass. Summoning all the strength I could muster, I screamed for help, hoping to scare away the intruder. Yet my cries only seemed to incite the mysterious figure further, driving it to pound on the window with frenzied determination. Desperate for salvation, I dialed 911, my voice trembling as I relayed the harrowing ordeal to the dispatcher. With each passing moment, the sense of dread intensified, until finally the arrival of the police brought a glimmer of hope. As the officers confronted the intruder, I watched in horror from the safety of the bathroom, the sound of shattering glass signaling the escalation of the confrontation. Heart pounding, I peeked out to witness the arrest, relief flooding over me as the threat was neutralized. In the aftermath, I learned the unsettling truth. The intruder was not a hardened criminal, but a troubled soul in need of help. Her erratic behavior stemmed from mental illness, a sad reality that left me shaken to the core. Though justice was not fully served, and the scars of that night lingered long after, I found solace in knowing that the troubled intruder would receive the care and attention she so desperately needed. And as I reflected on the ordeal, I resolved to be more vigilant in safeguarding my home and those within it. Nestled in the rural outskirts of New York, my small house stood as a haven amid vast expanses of wilderness. I frequented this tranquil retreat during the winter months for skiing trips, relishing the solitude and pristine beauty of the snow-covered landscape. Adjacent to my property, a fence delineated the boundary between my land and that of my reclusive neighbor. Despite our proximity, we had never exchanged more than a passing nod in passing. On the opposite side of my house, dense woods stretched for miles, shrouding the area in a veil of mystery. During my annual pilgrimage in January, an unexpected occurrence disrupted the usual tranquility of my retreat. As I approached my front door, the sound of a child's laughter drifted through the crisp winter air, originating from the direction of my neighbor's house. Puzzled by this unfamiliar sound, I ventured inside, eager to settle into my temporary abode. The following morning, I emerged from my slumber to embark on a day of skiing, only to discover a vibrant red ball nestled in the snow on my front lawn. Perplexed by its sudden appearance, I tossed it over the fence, assuming it belonged to the neighboring children. Upon my return from the slopes, darkness had descended, casting an eerie pall over the landscape. To my bewilderment, The red ball had reappeared on my lawn, defying all logic. Perturbed by this inexplicable phenomenon, I retrieved the ball once more, resolving to confront my neighbor about the peculiar occurrence. Venturing across the fence, I introduced myself to the elderly gentleman residing next door, seeking answers to the enigma that had plagued my solitude. Much to my surprise, he professed ignorance regarding any children in the vicinity, leaving me unsettled and unnerved. Returning to my house, I grappled with a growing sense of unease as I prepared for another night alone. Yet despite my efforts to rationalize the events, the laughter of a child continued to haunt the stillness of the night, sending shivers down my spine. As I drifted into fitful slumber, I was roused from my rest by the sound of laughter echoing through the darkness once more. Rushing to the window, I beheld the red ball resting on the snow-covered lawn, its presence an ominous harbinger of unseen terrors lurking in the shadows. Frantically searching my house for the elusive ball, I encountered a chilling realization. It had vanished without a trace. A sense of foreboding descended upon me as I grappled with the inexplicable disappearance, fearing the presence of an unseen intruder within the confines of my sanctuary. Driven by instinctual dread, I hastened to secure the premises, locking doors and windows in a desperate bid to stave off the encroaching darkness. Yet, as I peered through the blinds, I beheld a haunting sight. A child standing sentinel in the moonlit expanse, their gaze fixed upon my trembling form. With trembling hands and a heart heavy with fear, I retreated into the recesses of my room, seeking refuge from the malevolent presence lurking beyond the veil of night. As dawn broke upon the horizon, I hastily departed, leaving behind the specter of the red ball and the chilling memory of that fateful night. Living with my roommate George, our daily routine revolved around our shared commute to work and the mundane tasks of everyday life. Our comfortable routine, however, was disrupted when a new neighbor moved in next door, shrouded in mystery and uncertainty. Despite our attempts at neighborly introductions, our initial efforts to establish a connection with our enigmatic neighbor were met with silence. A peculiar incident involving our neighbor peering through the blinds only added to the sense of unease that permeated our interactions. As the days passed, our neighbor's odd behavior escalated, culminating in late-night disturbances that echoed through the stillness of the night. Confronted with the jarring sound of screams emanating from our neighbor's house, George and I found ourselves ensnared in a chilling nightmare. Driven by a sense of urgency, we contacted the authorities, seeking intervention to quell the escalating chaos. Yet, as the events unfolded, we found ourselves thrust into a harrowing ordeal as the boundary between safety and peril blurred beyond recognition. The intrusion of our neighbor into our sanctuary sent shockwaves of fear coursing through our veins, prompting a desperate struggle for survival against an unseen adversary lurking in the shadows. Confronted with the imminent threat of violence, George and I banded together, drawing strength from our solidarity in the face of adversity. As the tension reached a fever pitch, the timely intervention of law enforcement brought a momentary reprieve from the relentless onslaught of terror. Yet, even amidst the chaos, the revelation of the horrors lurking within our neighbor's abode served as a stark reminder of the fragility of our perceived safety. In the aftermath of the ordeal, the specter of fear lingered, casting a long shadow over our once tranquil existence. With our neighbor now incarcerated and the house standing vacant once more, we were left to grapple with the haunting memories of our brush with danger. As life slowly returned to normalcy, George and I found solace in the hope that the next occupant of the neighboring house would bring an end to the reign of terror that had gripped our community. Yet beneath the veneer of normalcy, the echoes of that fateful night continued to reverberate, serving as a somber reminder of the fragility of peace in an unpredictable world.